bunch of people wanted to make more money, wanted to stay up until 6 o'clock, and had absolutely no respect or no care for the people in their supply chain. So basically, the majority of us are following a bunch of delinquents who started a system that really now isn't fit the future. Right. So the people that should rebalance this business now should look at the mistakes made, but look at a different way of growing. It can't be that difficult.
There is so much there that I love how you put it. The 17 coffees attitude. It does sound so dated now, and it reminds me of the Halston Netflix drama last year, with that old school fashion attitude that has become this kind of stereotype of the industry. And it's so fantastic to hear, and makes me even more want to go to Stratford to meet your cohort of young designers. I should never say young, but emerging designers, and discover more about their ethoses, because this is the future, and that's so promising to hear. If we focus a little bit on the consumer now, and then I think I'd like to finish talking to you about this younger generation coming through. If you have this very revolutionary stance that I think it needs to not be revolutionary, but for many it is a revolutionary stance, that repairing and rewearing is the most powerful step we can take. One of your famed quotes is, "The most sustainable garment is the one you already own in your wardrobe." And I loved the infographic you shared on your Instagram recently. Shedzi from our team will put it in the group chat. It was a brilliant infographic, and it is this idea that sustainability isn't spending money on very expensive sustainable clothes, or indeed on fast fashion's greenwashing. Why does the consumer have the impression that it is that, and that it is everything that the infographic depicts? Shedzi's just shared it here.
Because they're called consumers, and we live in a consumeristic society, so everything is resolved with buying. Buying is being called a retail therapy, like it's a form of therapy. It's not, and if it is, we're using the wrong, therapist. If spending money, parting with money, is supposed to make us feel better. So that's, again, a cultural shift that needs to happen, because actually, when you keep, when you save, when you repurpose, your high is longer than if you buy something super cheap and wear it twice. Right. So, let's flip it. Let's talk at it. Let's talk at it rather than from the therapy point of view, from the drug point of view. So it's called shopaholic, like an alcoholic. I've written in my book that, Marx used to say that religion was the opium of the masses. Well, fast fashion and cheap fashion, the way that we're buying, is our crack cocaine. We are displaying all signs of an addiction at this point in time. And consumers have been caught in this quite naively in many ways. Again, there is a point in history when the fashion industry moves far away, and we no longer have our next door neighbor or our aunt working for the local, factory and so on and so forth. This removed no more an emotional connection. But what consumers could understand, if for them sustainability is about the releasing of funds, then to better spend them. And, the truth is that, yes, it's true. Sustainable design is more expensive than other design, but sustainable design is still quite a lot cheaper than, say, your average Gucci bag. Talking about bags, I just bought this one today from this design wanting. So this was expensive, even for me it was expensive, but it wasn't anywhere near as expensive as a Gucci bag. Handmade, every single stitch. This is luxury, beyond luxury. So if customers were to understand that if you identify these young designers and you support them throughout their career, not only are you likely to buy cheaper because you will be alerted to all of their sample sales, but there's a connection, there's a conversation. You can write to them and say, look, sorry, can you actually change it, alter it? It's like a whole new world of buying clothes that we've forgotten. So what I guess people such as myself are trying to do with something like the showcase with a difference. It's try and remind people that there's very different ways of buying, and that actually, if you can afford it, if you are like myself, privileged, meaning that you have a decent salary and you can afford, gifts for yourself that are, beyond what you desperately need, then there are ways that you can genuinely support this kind of raw and emerging talent. I don't give to charity, for instance. It's or very seldom do I, and only maybe to one very specific. But supporting young designers, paying for the work that they do. I could easily ask for presents, but I like to pay for the work that they do. I like the whole process of waiting, of saving, of knowing that something will come and how much I will treasure it. In itself, that whole process is brilliant. And you get hooked to that as much as you get hooked to buying cheap shit whenever you can.
And so I was going to then ask you about how we can shift communication around sustainability from sacrifice and guilt to one of joy, and this joy factor that has historically been associated with fashion. But actually, you've just nailed it. It's about shifting
pure lust. I mean, pure lust. It's the difference between fancying someone for a year and a half and eventually betting them to actually not fancying them at all and finding you. That might be very, very joyous for somebody, but for me personally, the length that I wait for something increases my longing.
Yeah.
And I increase my longing, and it's very poetic. It's extremely satisfactory.
So if we talk about this younger generation, we've mentioned them in the context of designers, and also you mentioned how brands, that there is a changing of the guard. The old school white men at the top are shifting. And I'd love to get your thoughts on Gen Z. They're a generation that fascinate me. Business of Fashion State of Fashion for 2022 report said that 43% of the generation actively seek out companies with a solid sustainability reputation. And yet I'm left there thinking about the 57% remaining and all of the TikTok OOTD videos that are served to me, which are of girls breaking down in kind of 15 seconds their outfits. And it's always the same designers, brands on rotation: Target, Shein, Misguided. Are we wrong to think that there is a revolutionary youth quake coming from this Generation Z?
I don't think that we are wrong. There is a revolutionary thing happening. It's just that it's not as eloquent or articulate as we wish it to be because, well, first of all, these kids are running scared and they don't really understand the full picture. So this compulsiveness of buying, we can see it as a coping mechanism. Clearly a coping mechanism. This is like, in a way, adults hooked to their phones. Whenever I look at my iPhone, I remember Fisher-Price toys. And, we're hooked on Fisher-Price iPhones pretty much, so that I can understand. But what is happening with these kids is that they are questioning the role of ownership.
Okay.
Because buy really quick, but they sell just as fast. And
that's true.
They really sell. So clothes that land on them, stay on them for a really short time and eventually leave them. So I'm very curious as to what this will look like with years to come. But at the end of the day, it looks to me like the fast fashion industry, to a certain extent, is making butter of itself. It's like the fact that trends are coming out daily, it's going to kill the concept of the trend. Who's going to suffer at the end of it? Fast fashion. The fact that clothes are coming so fast, they're being vomited in this system and vomited out just as fast by a generation that doesn't give a damn about owning anything. When these guys wake up to wanting to own, what will they want? They're not going to want the cheap stuff they've been getting rid of. They will want meaningful and purpose. So, I am, again, I switch from days that are positive and days that are negative. But this excess is now as visible as the litter on our streets, as the worst kind of literally, offense to your eyes. I don't think that Generation Z and snowflakes are going to take this much longer before they turn around. And again, if it's going by the young designers I'm working with, I mean, they're treating found objects, textile objects, like, you know, a resource, picking up, creating amazing things. That it's that in itself is a real critique to the industry that they studied in many ways. The fact that they just pick and find and make amazing out of nothing. So I do believe that this generation is undergoing a very profound shift. And I do believe that there is absolutely zero, there's going to be zero connection between the white men that we're talking about and the CEO of those same companies 2 generations after them.
That is very promising. And before we move to Q&A from the audience, and I can see some have come in, but please do send more, everybody. I wanted to finish on a positive note, which you've actually kind of already just done for me. I'm not sure if everybody knows, but we have been running the FashionMash Hope campaign for coming up to 2 years, and have been inspired by luminaries of industry and their hopes for the industry, from Baroness Lola Young to Wilson Oriema. And that brought us insight and optimism during a period we felt that it was so needed because it was the pandemic. But we now really want to focus more specifically on the actions required to truly transform the industry. So Orsola, to kick us off, I would love to know, what is the one crucial action you wish to see from the industry in 2022?
Pay your workers, all of them, all supply chain workers paid a dignified living wage, and, you know, sort of plan B, allowed to be unionized and therefore ask for a dignified living wage. First thing number one.
So succinct, so well put, and the plan B is also noted. Right, let's go to the audience Q&A. I'm just going to bring this up on my screen. So first of all, from Natalia Dutai, thank you for your question. She says, what is Orsola's take on digital fashion and crypto NFT hype that many fashion brands are now exploring at the moment?
Well, let's start from the principle, the fact that I am incredibly curious. And so I look at everything from that perspective, and anything that makes me feel that could potentially be bringing changes, I will look at with, you know, excitement. When it comes to digital fashion, there is an element to digital fashion that I do adore, and that's the playfulness. I mean, you know, I could play around with my filter on Zoom. Normally, when I do Zoom interviews, today I'm being serious, but if I'm speaking with my team, I'll be wearing the daisy generally of the filters that are on Zoom. So I'm susceptible to all of that. Remember dolls that you used to cut the, and just all of that. So anything that makes us play with clothes, I love, because it's instinctive. We want to play with our clothes. Of course, I'm aware of the fact that anything technological has an insane impact. I know very little about the non-fungible tokens, although I'm very interested in the concept, but I really don't know enough about their ecological footprint to comment. It doesn't sound that brilliant when you describe it. But with technology, with all the technology, and as I said, we do the Fashion Transparency Index, which itself lives in that world. If technology connects us with those instincts that we understand, and it is a way to somehow explore them further, then I'm all for it, like playing with clothes or, you know, transparency. We need to know where things you know, why things are made in that sense. So I feel that we do need to match technological innovation, not just to the future of the planet, but also to our instinct as people, if that answers your questions. Tech is not really important.
No, but you've still made it very relevant to everything we've been discussing, and relevant in a wider context, so thank you. Titania Massaro has asked, thank you for this interesting interview. I would like to address a pair of questions to Orsola. First of all, in her point of view, how can we understand sustainability in fashion today? I mean, using sustainability still being a good option to characterizing fashion brands that are really concerned about positive impact, transparency, nature, fair work, and so on. How can we understand sustainability in fashion today?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's again, and one of the things I'm most proud of around Fashion Revolution is that we use our language accurately. You know, sustainability, there's a dictionary definition for sustainability. So you can apply that definition to all sorts of different elements within a company. And, you know, as we said before, some companies are more focused on social and others are more focused on the environmental side. But there's very little that one can do to redefine a word that somehow has its meaning, really. I mean, what I can say around this question is that we need to analyze these words more carefully and how we use them. So if a brand says, you know, I am sustainable, you need to really understand what their claim is. Yeah. Often people confuse transparency with sustainability, and H&M did a whole campaign marching on that and saying we're the most transparent brand in the world, because they know that people go transparent, sustainable. Same as circularity. You know, it's actually really difficult to come up with a circular product. And so for consumers to be circular is very complicated. But it's not at all complicated to thinking about longevity, and longevity is what ultimately will lead you to a circular economy. So it's really trying to understand exactly what you are wanting to understand about the brand sustainability within that context. That's important. And are they making it easy for you to understand? Because they should.
Absolutely. And then the second part of her question relates to prosperity. Does talking about prosperity in fashion today make sense? Or how can we understand prosperity in fashion today?
Well, again, it's a question of reanalyzing the words and how we use them. I mean, you know, we talk about growth, but we never talk about prosperity. We never talk about abundance. You know, they're greatly different concepts. So, you know, abundance tells me that I want an abundant product, but also a bountiful soil and abundance of dignity for the people that make that product. So, you know, it's again how you define, and obviously prosperity, provided it is equally distributed throughout the supply chain, sounds like the most poetic thing ever right now.
And somewhat unlikely thing ever right now, even in 2020.
Unlikely thing ever right now, exactly.
Right, next question from Lucy O'Connor. Thank you, Lucy, for your question, and thank you, Tatiana, for yours. What is Orsola's take on the longevity of shopping events such as Black Friday and Singles Day in China? I'm doing my dissertation on this very topic.
Oh man, those are the ones that kill me, absolutely kill me. For the sheer, that's when I get snowed by the sheer abundance of it all. So I've got a really weird thing with sales, though, you see, because when I was a designer, I had a shop in Portobello Road, and one side of the street was very wealthy, but it was very old days, and the other side of my Portobello was right next to Golborne Road. The other side of the street had a very different type of inhabitant, very different type of families and people living there. And for me, being on sales meant that everybody could afford my product. So I don't you know, I'm not one of those people that says I never go on sale. I know a lot of young designers do so, but for me, actually being on sale can be an act of generosity. And I've often said to people, you know, it's the difference between having a really, really, really good washing machine and a slightly shitty washing machine is waiting until the sales come, then wait until the sales come. But obviously, the way that we're living, Black Friday and Singles Day, is just an abomination of anything remotely like that. And again, it completely shows this gigantification, this dinosauric dimensions that this industry has taken, that even something as simple as, you know, buying something when you can afford it has been distorted to the extent that it has.
I am going to rush through some questions now because we have suddenly got lots of questions through all at the same time. I don't know if I had a delay. So Right, in the hot seat, Orsola. First of all, Emily Tan. Does Orsola have any advice for young, independent, ethical and sustainable designers competing in a sea of established and funded brands?
Well, first of all, is look at the actual meaning of the word compete. Because compete, when you look at competere from the Latin, it doesn't mean one against the other, it means together. It means doing things together of the thing or the all. So just check that definition, because that in itself is helpful. Often the people that you're competing against are your truest friends. So there's safety in numbers. And while it is something like 40 mainstream brands control something like 95% of the market, never really quote me on statistics, but something around that, then you will see that the visibility, that young brands sticking together, working together, creating together, co-creating, sharing studios, doing pop-up, joining forces, that's incredibly important.
Thank you. Again, just marching through from Lottie. Do you believe fast fashion brands can go down the route of longevity as their take on sustainability with credibility, and that this will avoid greenwashing?
No, they can't, because none of their products are designed for longevity. So although we activists have really played into, I mean, we've done many autogol, whatever you call them, by saying fast fashion is so badly made it doesn't warrant being repaired. What we have been telling to fast fashion brands is keep producing, this kind of stuff, and we're just going to get rid of it. So we've played into our game completely. So, for me, change of mindset. Fast fashion is simply made, which makes it extremely simple to repair. I mean, if you've got a beautiful vintage gown with a French seam, don't touch it. But if you've got a Primark or a Zara skirt and the hemline falls, a cat could sew that hemline. No one would really notice the difference. So the only thing that brands like that should do is to actually put cheap repair stations within their stores. I believe that that's a moral obligation. I believe that if your business model implies selling cheap clothing that it's going to potentially last less than a better made clothing, then absolutely your responsibility is to provide just as cheap a mending service for your customers. That would go a bit of a way towards engaging the high street with longevity.
There are so many questions, everybody. I'm really sorry, we've just got more through, but we're not going to be able to answer them all this evening. So actually, I'm going to ask Samuel Ade, or rather state his question. Orsola, Samuel has asked how best to connect with you, because I'm sure lots of these questions you haven't been able to answer. They'd love to. Is it on Instagram? What is best for you? There we go.
Instagram would be by far the best.
Perfect.
And possibly not even a DM, just send me a comment, put flowers on it, because I'm a little bit dyspraxic. So grab my attention with something bright.
That's a very good idea, everybody. And of course, also you can always email me and Rachel, and we will do our best to connect if needs be too. So thank you for your questions. I'm so impressed by them. Just glancing through the chat, you guys should have just taken over and come up here instead of me. Thank you so much for attending and for your donations to Fashion Revolution. If you haven't had a chance to donate, the link is still live on Eventbrite, and please do so. Thank you to our brilliant sponsor of Klaviyo, who are with us for a second year, which is fantastic. We couldn't do it without them. So now let's finish on a quick fire round. Orsola, you're in the hot seat. Whatever springs to mind first, give me your answer. Revolutionary writing or protesting in the streets?
Revolutionary writing.
Handmade locally or designed by a famous creative director?
100% handmade locally.
I made that one quite easy, I think, didn't I? Vintage Gucci.
Yeah.
It's right there. I wasn't expecting that. That wasn't rehearsed. Vintage Gucci or talent from Fashion Open Studio?
Well, I've already got the vintage Gucci from my grandmother, so talent from Fashion Open Studio.
Perfect, good choice. London or Rome?
Well, that's my life. I was born in Rome and I came to London from Rome, so I'm afraid to say it's still London.
Well said. I back you there. A night in mending clothes or a night out debating over a bottle of wine?
Okay, neither.
Oh,
A night out,
yeah.
mending clothes, dancing over a bottle of wine.
Oh, you've totally reconfigured that. Excellent. Rental or...
The debate, I'm afraid, is my work day, so I don't do much debating at night.
So true. Rental or resale?
Resale.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, 2022 or 2032?
Ooh. 2022.
Both and everything in between.
Okay, good.
I love your response. Thank you so much, Orsola. Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening, and we will be back very soon.
Only 1 hour.
Thank you for having me so much, and lovely to see you both.
Oh, thank you. Bye. Thanks, Orsola.
Bye.
Oh, come on. Not enough time at all for this soul to really communicate what's happening. Like, an hour is not enough.